And as we sit contemplating, anytime the mind has a thought, bring the question, who am I, to the front of the mind. Anytime there is a distraction, bring the question, who am I, to the front of the mind. And just continually ask yourself that, but don't offer any answers. Don't think, oh, I know the answer now. Just keep asking the question. And allow that question to empty out the space within the mind so that it can be filled with truth and knowing, with wisdom and with acceptance, and most importantly, with love. Who am I? The ultimate inquiry. And placing the right hand on the heart and the left hand over the right. Together we'll lift our voices in one beautiful Om. Take a nice breath in. Bowing the head to the heart, acknowledging all that is. And drawing the face to center, release the hands and flutter the eyes open. Wow, what a beautiful weekend it's been. Inquire, who am I? Who am I really? And so, we're born into this life. And in the yoga tradition, we see birth as being the beginning of a process of both suffering and healing. We see the human body as being the composite of 5 elements. And those 5 elements are oftentimes at odds with one another and sometimes complement each other. It just depends on the circumstance. So there are times when our elemental composition feels pretty balanced, feels pretty healthy, feels pretty lively and vibrant and radiant. And then there are other times where we just feel off and at odds with ourselves, and our moods are swinging and our behavior is, erratic, and we can't seem to find stable ground. And in addition to having a body, ownership over a body, we also have ownership over a mind. And that mind has different compartments or components to it. It has an intellect. It has emotion. It has an ego. And the ego has different compartments to it. It's like a rabbit hole, with like all the different little twists and turns. And the ego has different components to it. It has health and it has illness. It has balance and it has imbalance. And the mind and the intellect and the ego come together in an exquisite discrimination. It tries to define and decide what's real. And it comes to believe that because we experience this life first through this body, if you don't believe that, just go stub your toe somewhere and don't hurt yourself, please. But, the first thing is like the body and the mind team up together and they define that experience. And therefore, we think we are the body and the mind. We think that's what we are. But every tradition in the world, no matter what tradition you're talking about, and even the traditions before organized traditions, all of the tribal traditions, all of the earth traditions that came, before organized religion, they all believed the basic same thing, that there is something else about us besides this body and this mind. And that thing is oftentimes called soul or spirit. In yoga, Atman. So that leads us to ask the question, how does that relate to this body and this mind? And by mind, I am including the intellect, the ego, the emotions, the thoughts. How does Atman, relate. You can't see it. You can't think it. You can't discriminate it, not with the ego. It's something that's a little bit beyond our reach, a little bit difficult to understand, and a little bit difficult to approach. So many of the great saints and sages in the ancient days decided that they would try to explain it in a way that would allow people to understand that whatever qualities you bring to the roles you play in life, like the yamas and the niyamas versus harmful behaviors, that in some way, shape, or form is going to either support or hinder your experience of your own spirit. It's going to somehow hinder your experience of your own potential. It's going to somehow hinder your ability to see the ultimate divine beauty that exists, the ultimate divine oneness. And if you don't believe that, then just think about the last time you were angry. The last time you were angry and you shut yourself off. The last time you were fearful and you put the walls up. So they wrote so many beautiful scriptures talking about how to be what came to be defined as a good person. And yes, they do. The yamas, the niyamas, all the ethics through all the traditions, they support our ability when we practice them to be a good person, but potentially more importantly, they allow space free of guilt and fear and anger so that the true self, the inner self, can come forward without obstacle. And we can have a clear knowing, a clear understanding, a clear vision of who we really are. Otherwise, we walk through this life thinking, I am this body, I am my injuries, I am my traumas, I am this mind, I am my emotions, I am my instability, I am my anger, I am my doubt. Without awareness on some level of the inner self, of the ultimate truth of the self, we walk around limiting ourselves to what is physical. But that's not all there is. I mean, it happens, right? So we stub our toe, we knock our knee, we have a car accident, our house burns down, we lose our spouse, whatever it happens to be. We have these experiences in life, and the pain that we feel in those experiences are very real. But that's not all there is. And the closer we come to the inner self, the more we understand that. I have a friend named Dipti. Such a lovely woman. She's a Hindu woman. And she likes to explain a relationship this way. She says it's like a train. And you have a station that you go to get on the train. And it's your turn to get on the train. So you're born, basically. You get on the train, you take a seat. Now, other people are getting on and off the train at every stop. And you're watching this, and you're witnessing this, and you're just kind of sitting in your seat saying, oh, you can come sit next to me for a while. You can't. Please don't come sit next to me at all. Or I don't want anybody to sit next to me. Whatever your mentality is, The only thing that you can do is witness. All these other people are going to get on the train and off the train according to their schedule, not yours. So when people come and people go, we need to allow them to do so, because we were never meant to keep them. They're not a tchotchke to be put up onto our shelf. They're a free soul to journey and live a life where maybe they'll rediscover the truth of their inner self and become a beacon of light and hope for so many. Isn't that what we want for everybody? Don't we want people to heal? We want people to come into their own light and into their own kindness and into unity. So we sit on this train witnessing, and then one day the train stops, and it's our stop. We get off the train and get on another one, because there's always another train. There's always another life. There's always another moment, So we look at this inner self and we try to make some sense of it, because it's really not easy to understand unless you do. And as one of the scriptures that I read this morning, which I know that was a lot of heavy scriptures in class, so thank you all for listening. There were some very light ones too, but there were definitely some intense ones. But one of the scriptures said basically that once you know the inner self, you don't have to question anymore, because now you know. And all doubts and all delusions and all ignorance wipes away, dissolves. But here's the thing. To know the truth of the inner self, we have to have faith in the knowing. How do we cultivate faith in knowing? Because you have to have faith in yourself and in your own knowing in order to be able to recognize the truth when it comes right face to face with you. So this means that we need to see our body, our senses, our mind, our intellect, our ego, our emotions, and those of all others in a light that is discerning but kind, understanding and straightforward, and compassionate. So that we don't take the words, the actions, or the limitations that other people feel they have and put them onto our own shoulders. Does that make sense? Yeah. Because until you have faith in your own efficacy as a human being, how will you ever have faith in something you can't see, feel, touch, or understand? Something like spirit, and the truth of that and the power of that. So coming into understanding that this body is your vehicle, and yes, you are very intimately connected to it. Absolutely. I happen to like being in this body. I'm good with it, and I hope it lasts for a long time. But it's not all I am. I have a mind. And I like my mind. Sometimes it's a little busy, but I like it. It's okay. I've learned how to deal with it. And I hope this mind stays lucid for a very long time. But I know that I am not just this mind, that I have a relationship with this mind. I have a relationship with this body, and it's an intimate relationship, but it doesn't define me as a person. It doesn't define what I really am or who I really am. And then I say, well, if I'm not this body, and if I'm not this mind, and if I'm not these five senses, then what am I? And you just keep asking that question, what am I? Who am I? Why am I? And that question, for some reason, just kind of parts the waters a little bit and opens up a little bit of space for experiential understanding to unfold. And in the experiential understanding of one's inner self, that's where you come into knowing. That, when you feel the balance, when you feel the goodness, when you feel the connection, when you feel the unity, then you know. And you know why you know? Because your heart breaks open when you walk away from it. When you walk away from it and deny it, your heart says, what the hell are you doing? Turn around and walk back again. Go back to the light. Live in the light. Live in the truth of yourself. And don't be diminished into a sense of suffering by artificial circumstances of the ego's making, or misunderstandings of the mind, or the experience of trauma. Trauma is very real. I have a lot of it too. We all have it, to varying degrees. But from a really early age, and I've shared this with so many of you, from a really, really early age, like single-digit ages, in the middle of trauma, very specifically, either I said to myself or something said to me, you're going to survive this. And it's just going to make you stronger for what you will endure later. So don't think that this is who you are, because it's not. And I always carried that with me. Because even at a young age of like 8, I knew that my trauma was not who I really am. That it was a really challenging, traumatic experience that I would have to work very hard and long in order to heal on any level, but that it still didn't define me. And that the work I would do there would inform the work I would do later. I had no idea. Do you know where you're going to be when you're 55, Brahmani? Do any of us know where we're going to be tomorrow, an hour from now? No. We may have really well laid out plans, but you know what they say about those, right? Yeah. So we have an intimate relationship with the body and the mind, and we honor that relationship. And we try to use the mind discerningly to take care of the body and mind so that suffering is as minimal as it can be in a physical body and in a mental, funhouse. And so we try to be as discerning as possible so that there's enough spaciousness within us that when we are accessible to the truth, that we see it, we feel it, we know it, and then we embrace it and we live it. So the inner self and the external self. The inner self. And a lot today in the world, and particularly kind of like the New Age, there's this really anti-establishment movement, anti-religious movement in the world right now, but particularly in the West, where people are moving very rapidly away from organized religion. And I understand why. I moved away from it myself. I understand why people are doing that. But I also feel for the confusion that moving away is going to cause them if they don't have some other understanding that's grounded in some kind of tradition. And I know this for a fact because I've spoken with so many people who come and say, I feel so lost. I feel like I don't belong here, so I left that. And I don't belong here, and I don't really know where I belong. And I read a book, and it sounds really great, but I don't really know if that's where I belong either. And I read a little bit about yoga, and I read a little bit about Wicca, and I read a little bit about this. And you can read all the books you want, but reading books, and it even states this in the scriptures, reading books is not going to give you the answer that you're seeking. It won't. Experience will give you the answer you're seeking. And it's always helpful when you're on a journey to have a bit of a map, Unless, of course, you're someone who likes to go hiking out in, the Adirondacks or something with no map, high adventurous person. That requires a lot of faith to go out into the mountain ranges with no guidance whatsoever. I don't know, who in here would do that? Go into the deep, deep forests. Yeah, okay. So there are a few. Very good. I'd only put my hand halfway up. Yeah. So.
I do know where to go.
Yeah.
But can you ever really be lost when there's like the sun and watching the wind and all of those other things?
That's a good question. Yeah, so there's a story, right, of these two guys who are hiking through the desert. They get this great idea that they're going to go hiking in the desert, so they do. And there's some kind of a sandstorm or something, and their compass breaks, and their phones die, and their water spills, and they're in the desert for several days, and they have no food, no water, and it's stoking hot out there. And now they're they're blistering because of the sun. They have no shelter, and they get to a point where there's like this dune in front of them, and they're trying to crawl their way to the dune to make it just a little further, and the one guy dies, right? He dies, and the other guy is just like so hopeless, and he tries to make it a little bit further, and then he just kind of collapses down. And on the other side of the dune is a town. It's right there. Yeah. So I don't know. I think all kinds of things can happen when you journey out, all kinds of things. And it shouldn't stop you from journeying. But just know that following the sun might not be enough, especially if you don't know how to do that. So you need a technical manual to teach you how. Follow the moon. Most people don't know how to do that. Most people don't know how to follow the wind. Most people don't know how to do these things. So they need a manual, some kind of a guide to live our life, right?
Literally, if you follow the moon, you'll walk in a circle.
Yeah. Literally. This is true. Yeah, it is. So we need some kind of a guide to help us journey through this life. And that's what these great traditions provide for us. Whether we're talking about Catholicism or Judaism or Islam or Zionism or yoga or Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma, whatever it is that we're talking about, all these great traditions provide a guideline. So if a person finds that they are dissatisfied with the current day leadership within a tradition, then fine. If that's what your heart's telling you is to leave the organization, then go ahead. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You need the guideline. We all need the guideline. Have a guideline. And that's what I tell people who I talk to who have lost their religion and lost their spirituality. I tell them, you need to find a guideline. And the most beautiful guideline and the most simple guideline are the yamas and the niyamas. The way to be a good person. To be a good person in this physical body with this mental mind. And then that being a good person alleviates guilt, alleviates resentment, alleviates vengefulness, alleviates envy and jealousy, alleviates the harmful desires. We're not here necessarily to wipe out all desire. After all, peace is a desire too. But we are here to learn the difference between healthy and unhealthy. And when a desire is unhealthy, then work to eliminate it in a healthy way. Don't just pile unhealthy on top of unhealthy on top of unhealthy. And utilize these beautiful guidelines of non-violence, non-harming, truthfulness, non-stealing, non-grasping, being economical about your energy, reserving, not diving into every single drama that comes along. Contentment, cleanliness, discipline. Discipline is such a 4-letter word for an 8-letter word. Is it 8 letters? I don't even know, but it sounded good. But it really is. Discipline is such a 4-letter word today. People look at discipline like shackles on their wrists and ankles. It's like discipline is not like shackles. Discipline is freedom. It's like when you have a disciplined schedule, you have freedom to understand where your space exists, that you can do what you want to do in, while still taking care of your responsibilities, People who live completely undisciplined lives, and I've met a few, they say they suffer. They say they suffer. They say, yeah, I just can't put my feet on the ground. I don't know how. And I wish someone could show me. And so we have a conversation, and I suggest to them a yoga practice that focuses on grounding. I'll never forget, I had there's a friend in New Jersey who, before I knew who this person was, he came to me because, and Brahmani, you'll appreciate this, very vata. Yeah, so you know what that means. Brahmani is also an Ayurveda practitioner, so vata just means he's got a lot of air and a lot of space going on in his elemental composition. So he comes to me and he says, I'm wondering, like, if you could teach me how to hold my handstand. And I said, sure, we can work on that, absolutely. Let's go through the alignment. Well, first show me where you're at. So I don't even know really quite how to explain it, other than to say he hopped, bounced, and jumped into handstand and then ran on his hands across the room and toppled over, somehow landing on his feet and standing back up again. And I just said, okay, vata. Yay, air and space. We need to get some earth in there, We need to get a little bit of fire in there and a little bit of water in there. You don't need any more air and space in there. So I worked with him, bringing structural stability to his preparation to go into handstand. And it was the most painful thing for him, because even the thought of rooting his feet down into the earth was something that was foreign to him, so foreign to him. And the way that I practice handstand is coming into it from downward facing dog, and he needed to have that air, he needed to have that push, that sweep, that flow to jump up there. But then he didn't have the integration of the body, the mind, and the effort in order to hold it in stillness. He had to move in order to hold it. And really, it's quite a beautiful thing. It's like a dance, right? Unless the dance is causing you some kind of mental or physical distress. But, he came in for a few sessions, he tried to work with it, and he gave up. Yeah. So, the moral of this story is don't give up. Don't give up just because it's difficult. If it's difficult, it means it's something that you need to work with. If grounding is what you need in this life, if discipline is what you need in this life, if love and surrender and service are what you need in this life, if faith is what you need in this life, don't give up until you master them. Don't give up until you master them. Because if you give up on them, then you're ultimately giving up on yourself, and you're giving up on your inner self. And that's the whole reason for you being here, is to rediscover that, not to give up on it. But even in the giving up, that is still part of your path. So yoga has it all covered, man. I totally love it. It's like, yeah, so if not one, then the other. And if not that one, then this one. And if not this one, then that one. And if none of them, then in the last moment of your life, think of me. Think of God, That's what Krishna says. He says, in the last moment of your life, just think of me. And it'll all be okay. But man, that journey is tumultuous. It is a roller coaster ride for sure. So when the happiness and the easefulness and the stable handstand comes your way, be grateful. And when the tumultuousness and the unstable handstand running across the room on your hands comes your way, be grateful. Work to balance them out so that there's a greater equanimity in your own heart. And you're cultivating a space in which you are empowered to rediscover who you really are. Does that all make sense? Yeah. So this question, who am I? So important. It can be answered with 2 words. I am. Right? It's so simple. Who am I? I am. And that's all. I just am. And then we can move beyond, at least a little bit, the descriptors, I am a woman. I am a white woman. I am a middle-aged woman. I am a teacher. I am a student. I am a mother. I am a daughter. I am a spouse. I am a widow. That's a new one. right? Yeah, not one I prefer, but hey, I am. So I have to treat that with the same equanimity that I treat other things with, right? Yeah. I am a person. I am the wind. I am the sun. I am the moon. I am the stars. I am all of this. And then in a very mystical, mysterious way, I am none of it. Neti, not that. But I think that there's one little line that's missing there from the neti interpretation. People say, I am not that, I am not that, I am not that. And then somebody else will inevitably ask, well, what about unity? And you're everything, It's like, maybe we could say, I am not just that. I am not just that. That does not define me. That does not define me. And that does not define me. Because I'm beyond that definition. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, what definitions are you stuck in your life that in order to rediscover the truth of your inner self, you need to move beyond? Yeah. And at the beginning of the retreat, I had you write down 5 roles. And we only worked a little bit with the first one. But my invitation to you is that's the beginning of a very long list. A very long list of roles. Go through the process with every single one of them. And for those of you who are not in the retreat, so you write down 5 roles you play that you identify very strongly with. I identify with the role of mother. I identify with the role of teacher. I identify with the role of student. I identify with the role of this, with the role of that. With the first one, you write down the quality that you most deeply want to infuse that role with. And mother is kind of like, it's not an easy one, but love, right? Yeah, love. Now you write down 3 qualities that you currently practice that actually negate the love. And then in the 4th column, you write down the qualities that will balance the qualities that negate the love. Sometimes that's just love. But you can also be specific about it, and you could say, well, in these situations, I tend to not love because of fear. And so I just need to be more courageous and brave. In these situations, I won't love because of judgment. And so I'll learn how to curb my judgment in this situation. So you really work with that list in order to bring about a harmonious balance through the process of getting to know yourself, your physical, external self. And by coming to understand the truth about the physical, external self, then you come to understand something about your inner self. Absolutely. So I have to give Brahmani kudos for a second, because Brahmani is in our spiritual leadership program. She's also been with the ashram for quite a long time now. And she made a statement at not the last meeting, but the meeting before that. We were talking about the higher, like what's called the higher self. And then it kind of like in relationship, what would the opposite be, the lower self? We get kind of stuck in that wording. And Brahmani said, and I'm paraphrasing, so correct me if I'm wrong. She said, the thing I don't like about the term higher self is that it implies superiority. Is that right? Yeah, of something. So it sounds egoic. And then I was reading, and I came across an alternate word, inner. Yes, the inner self versus the external self. And I love that because it's not superiority. It is true. Right? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for that inspiration. So what questions or reflections do you have? What thoughts? Sam?
I've always got something to say.
I know you do. There's a couple of you in the room right now.
Yeah, when I was really excited to come to this retreat titled Who Am I? Because it's a big thing that I'm thinking about. And I think the biggest thing that keeps me away from it is like getting stuck in my stories and my to-do list. So for what's an example of a story that I get stuck in of like in my relationship not having like pure reciprocity. So like giving more than I'm getting, and that I'm not giving enough time to exercising, and I just kind of keep getting stuck in that story, and it really kind of keeps me away from myself. And these stories they kind of keep repeating, where like I'm thinking about this like project I have going on at work next week, and that just keeps me away from like right now. So how do we kind of acknowledge that that's part of your life, but not let it kind of take over the right now?
Yeah, and so it has something to teach you. And so the third niyama is tapas, discipline. And so when we see our mind going off in a certain direction, and this is what I love about the teachings of yoga, and you'll find this pretty much in every scripture, the Bible, you'll find it in the Quran, you'll find it in the Certitudes, where if I start looking at a relationship and I say, there should be like exact reciprocity, and I say, then I bring myself back to remembering that we're not the same person. So action doesn't mean the same thing to both of us, right? Action doesn't mean the same thing to both of us, and inaction doesn't mean the same thing to both of us, and reciprocity doesn't mean the same thing to both of us. And so now that I understand that we're not the same person, now I need to also understand that we're kind of the same person. We're both in this relationship, and we're both seeking something, and we're probably both seeking that something outside of ourselves. And that causes some kind of suffering, right? And then the third thing that I can remember, from all of the readings is that we're actually exactly like each other, because the thing that we're seeking, even though we're looking in potentially not the best place, is love. And love does not need reciprocity. Now, understanding that, the sameness between us is the longing for love, the seeking acceptance, understanding, and these things, and that there's no necessity for reciprocity. Then you need to turn around and ask yourself another question. Well, now that I understand this, then I can see this in the light of individual lives, similar lives, and sameness. Now, is there enough here for me to stay? Am I willing to accept this as it is and stay? Or am I willing to accept this as it is and leave? And that's where people get caught up. Because then they say, why can't you just change? But if they change, they will not be the same person that you fell in love with. If they change, they'll become another person. And if they change, then you'll ask them to change something else. If you ask them to change one thing and they change, then you'll ask them to change something else. And then you'll ask them to change something else. And then you'll ask them to change something else. And you'll never stop asking them to change. And so if you're going to stay in the relationship, then one must also learn how to be content with what is. I know. Darn. Darn it. Yeah. Or don't. And the ultimate question is, how much do you want to suffer in this life? And if you can't stay and accept what is, because there's not happiness there, and there's not joy there, then you need to look at why you're staying. What need do you think this person is responsible to fill for you? And then you have to ask yourself, this is like an endless list of questions, come on, right? I mean, my God. Here we are. Thank goodness we live for 80 to 100 years. Man. Because then you need to ask yourself, why am I expecting this person to do this for me? Why am I expecting this person to meet this need when I can't meet it myself? What is it that I need to work on in myself to meet this need? And then maybe I don't have to depend on this other person who's just as freaking lost as I am. And wondering in their own mind about whatever it is that they're wondering about. And don't make assumptions. Don't assume that your partner should understand you. Don't assume that your partner should remember your birthday. Don't assume that your partner should always be in a good mood and smile just because you're in a good mood and smiling. Because in that way, you're not the same person. And if your partner comes home in a pissy, grouchy mood, then leave him alone. Don't be like, let me cheer you up. Let me make you happy. I'm making you happy. Right? Right? No, you just back away and say, I'm here if you need me. Yeah. Talk about the downers of mature relationships, right? But really, it's just having a relationship where you recognize what's sacred. Yeah, Brahmani.
And a different kind of relationship where it's someone you see every day. So this is what I'm going for right now. I'm like puzzle piecing this all together. See every day, and this person has some pretty violent tendencies. I like storming around the kitchen, just banging things and expletives, and just because you're trying to get a pot of water on or something. Simple, easy, a little over the top. And, there are quite a few things you said today. Trauma is being brought up within inside of me, and so I'm feeling scared and unsafe and frustrated at this point because I just want to relax and do my job and have an easeful environment. And so I'm kind of like puzzle piecing this all together. Obviously, he's not going to change his ways. And I don't want to go up to him and say, you need to stop doing this because I'm feeling this way. He's in a leadership position, so I think in a way I can kind of go up to him and say, like, hey, this is what I feel when you're doing these things.
Right.
It's affecting my job in this way, and the environment and things like that. I could get through to him and things, but just like everyone who changes, including me, it's still going to happen until I address this probably a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
And so recently I've been trying to remember when it happens and I feel that like tightness going into my body, just to say something to myself like I'm safe, that's not me, he's not attacking me, he's really just attacking himself and the pot.
That poor pot.
But, is there any other suggestions that you have? Because it's still kind of like, I guess it's only been a day that I've really like sat down and tried it, but.
Yeah, and so it's going to take some time. And so the first thing that you need to understand, and you just said, is that this is him. This is him in his intimate relationship with his self. This is not about you. So that's the first thing to understand. The second thing to understand is that your reaction to what he's doing is you. And it is not him. It is you with an intimate relationship with yourself. And in the yoga, I don't know if you recall, but in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras and in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, it talks in there about prana. And it talks about the flow of prana through the body. And how when there's jerky movements, that's a disruption of prana. That's a disruption in the energetic flow within the body. And that we should cultivate our practice such that those disturbances are minimized. We're not saying stuff it. No. What we're saying is practice grounding. practice affirmation. I am safe is a great affirmation. I'm okay in this moment is a great affirmation. This doesn't belong to me is a great affirmation. Absolutely, this doesn't belong to me. Grounding practice, standing in your mountain pose, feeling the feet into the ground, feeling the stability, and allowing yourself to build up a sense of strength within yourself when he's behaving like this, not so that you become negatively indifferent to what he's doing, but so that you become strong in your own presence and then still remain calm. And talking is also okay. He may not change, but he may have a compassionate opening in his heart if you approach it a certain way, and not saying you have to change this, because of course then that's just going to bring defensiveness, but saying something perhaps along the lines of, my understanding is that when we're working in the kitchen and we're working with food, that the quality that we bring to our work is the quality that we put into the food. And the quality that we bring to our work is the quality that we bring to our coworkers. And in my own heart, I would really love to be able to work in an environment that has more peace than disturbance. And there are personal reasons for that, which I'm not going to share because they're personal. But if there's any way at all that you can kind of explore that for yourself, I would really appreciate it. Because sometimes I'm left feeling a bit uneasy. I don't expect you to change, but I'm asking if there's a way that you can support me in this. And I'm just letting you know that I would be grateful for that. It's okay to say that to somebody. It takes a lot of chutzpah, but it's okay to say that. So, and then you of course you can't be attached to what his answer is. Stating what we need is such a big thing. Understanding we may not get what we need is another thing. But even just being able to say to your partner, to say to your love, this is what I need in this relationship. And don't say, I don't know what I need. Right? What do you need from me? I don't know. No. You have to have particulars. You have to be able to say, I need for us to sit down and have a conversation. And I need for that conversation to be two ways. I need for us to be able to talk about our emotions with each other and what we're going through and our insecurities and not feel like we're judging each other for it. This is what I need. And I'm really hopeful that you can be the one to work with me on this. Can you? And then take their answer as honest. And don't ask any more of them than what they're able to give. That's something else that's in the scriptures too. It says, you do not bring teachings to a person who is not interested in the teachings, and you do not ask people questions when you know that they can't answer them. As in, putting them on the spot and having, humiliation or something like that set in, right? And we need to remember that with our partners in this life too. It's not just for students, it's also for our family and our love and, all of that. It's not easy. It's not. But it is self-inquiry. It is inquiring into the self. Why is reciprocity so important? Is it not good enough to simply love? Yeah. And then if reciprocity is something that you decide is important, because of course we have to look at that, and determine health versus not health, then we always need to make a mindful decision about what we are willing and what we are not willing to tolerate in our relationships and in our life. And I'm real big on that with women particularly, because we tend to tolerate more than what we're willing to. And that really breaks down the fabric of our own connection to ourselves. And I'm sure men do that too. But with women, it seems to be a chronic issue, where we just make excuse after excuse after excuse for poor behavior. And we just say, well, it's okay, I can deal with it. It's okay, this is my duty. No, that's not your duty, actually. Your duty is to be a compassionate person who abides in ethics and who also does not harm self. So don't make excuses. Stand up for yourself. Stand up for yourself. But compassionately. I know, right? It's so hard. And I wish that I had something more to offer than that, but that's really the environment too, where this is happening. This is the typical environment there, and it's hard. It's hard. So you either have to become really confident in your own self and just let them be who they are, and you be the peace that and the focus and the clarity that is walking through the space. And maybe they'll start mimicking you. That would be beautiful, wouldn't it? Absolutely. They'll be like, why is that Rachel always so peaceful? Oh, maybe I could give that a try. And then they'll come start asking you questions, but then you also have to deal with what this brings up for you. And that's potentially the most important thing, because you don't want to put yourself into a state of fight or flight over it. Yeah.
I've already thought about putting up a little sign with my stations. I just remember if I get caught in those states and I just totally forget.
Yeah. Are you allowed to play music in there at all?
Yeah, I do put music on.
Theta waves?
When I'm alone.
No, with other people there.
It's kind of like, I just, the people I work with are totally cool.
Yeah.
Chanting or like theta waves on. They're cool classical music. I put on the 70s, Beatles, Grateful Dead, all this stuff, and they're all great.
Yeah. But the theta waves, because the theta waves do something to the brain waves, right? And so if you have them on, even really low in the background.
Can you wear earbuds?
No.
Oh, I didn't mean for her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't mean for you.
That would be great, honestly.
Yeah, totally. Pipe it in over the intercom. Everybody will be sitting there in a state of nirvana, Yeah, totally. But like, theta waves.
That's a group?
It's no. It's a type of music that invokes the production of theta waves in the brain, which provokes the experience of a nirvana-like state. Yeah, totally.
It
Oh.
helps and support the parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah, the relaxation state.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it also supports the immune system. So listening to this type of music actually supports your health, your overall physical health as well. So maybe put that on in the background. Yeah, for you too, but more for them. Yeah, more for them. Any other thoughts or reflections? Yeah, Rich. It is true of the dead too. Yeah, totally. It is. Absolutely. Yes.
So you had asked us to come up with one characteristic, I guess, of what you needed for all of your roles in life.
Yeah, what thread is common through there?
And it took me until yesterday to come up with it, and it's acceptance.
Oh, yeah.
It's what is. Just
Yeah.
let things be how they are. And just
Exactly.
accept them for what they are.
Yeah. So letting things be how they are. If there were tacks all over this floor, right? Someone took a box of tacks and went, pshoo, right? And you had to get to the door. Your greatest gift to yourself is to accept that the tacks are there and walk mindfully through that minefield to the door. Correct?
Or just put shoes on.
Or just put shoes on. It's good, very good, Cal. Very good. Or just put shoes on. But you don't have any shoes. You have bare feet only. Yeah, the shoes are on the other side of the door. Very good, very good. I like where this is going. So now you can look, and you can either pick every single tack up as you go along, which is going to take forever, or you can mindfully maneuver your relationship to those tacks, to those landmines, to those triggers, to those expectations, and just leave them alone. Let them be there, accept them as they are, and pay attention to what you're doing, how you're walking. Yeah. And so now those tacks are people and relationships and things. You don't have to pick each and every one up. You just have to notice how you're walking through. And that's the acceptance. Acceptance is also recognizing that even though you're thoroughly invested in a spiritual path and in your spirituality, and you're doing all this wonderful work, you are still going to have emotions, desires, traumas come to the surface. You're going to. I'm sorry, but there's no one in this room who is a saint. There's no one in this room who has it all figured out. There's no one, in this world, maybe there's a handful of people who are beyond the beyond. Maybe. But for the rest of us, we're working at it, as best we can. So that means we're going to have anger. We're going to have these things. Then how are you walking through it? Accepting that it's there. I accept that I'm feeling anger right now. I accept that I'm feeling sadness. I accept I'm feeling guilt, remorse, love, passion, whatever it happens to be. It doesn't mean I have to interact with it. Yeah, what did you want to say, Thomas?
That emotional turbulence is, to me, an essential part of the path.
Yeah.
That it's not about trying to overcome or even limit emotional turbulence. It's really just learning how to allow and accept emotional turbulence as our greatest gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's where the rubber meets the road.
It is.
Is in that emotional turbulence. So I think Swami G has emotional turbulence. I've seen it.
Oh, he does. He absolutely does.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. Amma has very deep emotional turbulence.
I heard.
Yeah,
I know. I was a little surprised, She's a woman and everything. You'd think that she, was there.
It's so the emotional turbulence is not a problem. It's our relation. It's how we relate, or we allow, or we use that energy, like you were talking about the prana. Yeah. It's just prana. That's all it is.
It's so funny, the first time that I saw Swamiji's emotional turbulence. Yeah. He was having lunch in the cafeteria, and we were all in class. And I went to get a cup of chai, and I walked in, and he was eating. And I apologized. I didn't mean to interrupt your lunch. He said, no, sit. I said, okay. I thought I was going to get, why aren't you in class? And he's eating, and he's not saying much. And I said, I really should get back to class, Swamiji. And he said, no, wait. He finished his meal. He cleaned it all up. He put everything there. He's very proper that way. And he sat up straight and he said, what is it with Rashi? He talks like a woman. He never shuts up. I tell him, stop talking like that. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then he goes, okay, go to class. And I'm like, wow, I'm impressed. Yeah, because, the emotional turbulence is absolutely there. The impatience is there, the whole thing. But he also lets go of it so much faster. It's done. It's done. And what I learned that day was in some part how to not attach myself to the longevity of it. Like, just because I'm upset in this moment doesn't mean I got to be upset with you in the next moment, or upset with myself in the next moment. You can let those things go. Yeah. And anger and these things are kind of like a monster in our dreams. And I'm not sure, Leah, if you were the one who said this maybe, but it's, I've said it also, and I've heard a lot of people say it. In our dreams, the monster chases us until we turn around. Was that you? No.
That was during our SLC too.
Yeah.
What was it?
During our SLC.
Oh, yeah.
Charles' story.
Yeah.
Shadow.
Yeah. Maybe, yeah. So was it Charles or Chad?
Charles told the story.
Charles told the story. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. So you turn around in the dream and you face the monster, and suddenly it's like, a little tiny mouse or something. You're like, why was I running from this? So you turn around and face the anger instead of running from it or running, with it. And suddenly it loses its power. It doesn't mean it's not going to rear its head up again. It certainly will. But then the more you face it, the more you accept it, the less power it has over you. Yeah.
And that's the essentiality of it, is that even here is peace.
Yeah.
Even in the depths of this is peace.
Yeah.
And then that's like a muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And exercise it, it's like, well, where's the next time I can find peace in that?
Yeah,
You know?
and that's really, it's so profound. And that's what Gandhi meant when he said, there is even divine beauty in starvation. And that's something that most people will say, what? He said, yeah, he said, you look in the eyes of a person who is starving, and you'll find beauty there. But that's what you need to be looking for. Yeah.
We talked about I am, and I'm wondering if there's anything, there's a statement, I am that I am, that I hear. Is there anything in the scriptures about that statement, I am that I am, in comparison with
Soham.
I am?
Soham. Say so. Hum. I am. Yeah, it gives me goosebumps. Soham. And it's all throughout the scriptures. All throughout the scriptures. It's in the Bhagavad Gita, it's in the Vedas, it's in the Upanishads. Yeah, absolutely. And not remembering which Upanishad right now. I feel like it is the Ideas. Which Upanishad talks about Soham? No. I'll have to look it up. But there's one of the Upanishads that addresses that very beautifully. It's not the Mandukya because that's Om, but there's another one. Yeah, it's throughout. I am. And in saying I am, there's an implication, I guess, for lack of a better word right now, there's an implication that I'm not talking about this body, and I'm not really talking about this mind, that I'm talking about me, as in I, as in connection to that spirit.
So the Kena Upanishads? I just remember.
Oh, the Kena Upanishad.
By whom?
By whom was this created? Yeah. Oh, that's such a beautiful. By whom was this created? And he either knows or he does not. Yeah. Yeah, we're not going to go down that road because, I'm running late already. Okay. Yeah. Any other thoughts, reflections? Because we'll talk for another hour on that one. Or maybe a week.
I am hungry.
Any other thoughts or reflections? Cal, anything today? All right. Anything? No, we're good? All right. So retreat attendees, I just want to say thank you so much. It's been a joy to spend this weekend with each and every one of you. Thank you for the beautiful work on yourself and on your life, and, continue. Just continue. And don't worry about the obstacles. Just keep your eye on the ball. And the ball is meeting you and who you really are. And for the visitors coming in just for this morning, thank you for coming and for continuing to come and for continuing to do your work and, to just keep inquiring about, who am I? Who am I? And who are we? And what is that? And what do we all have in common? What is unity? As the Certitude said, and I'll close with this, as the Certitude said, if you are not asking about unity, then you are not asking the right question. Yeah. So let's sit nice and tall and close the eyes. Breathing in and breathing out. Placing the right hand on the heart, left hand over the right. Together we'll chant 3 Soham followed by 1 Om. Breathing in. Soham. 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 Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all beings everywhere be peaceful and free. Namaste. Thank you all so much for being here. So good to see and gather with each and every one of you. Have a great lunch. Have a great day. Enjoy. Enjoy. It's so beautiful. Oh, man. It's so beautiful. Enjoy. Very good.